Lights up! Welcome to the next episode of Lights Up, the Putney Theatre Company podcast. Gathered here today with the entire cast of Death and the Maiden, which is in the studio next week. And so we're talking about how much we could actually reveal of the play, because it's an intriguing play. But first I'm going to get the actors to introduce themselves. Paul.
Hello, I'm Paul Dineen. I'm playing Roberto Miranda.
I'm Sharon Czudak and I'm playing Paulina Salas.
And I'm Aidan Kershaw and I'm playing Gerardo Escobar.
So we had a long discussion beforehand about exactly what we can reveal about the play, because it's full of dangers. So we're going to start by discussing, I think, what the play is about in as much as we can talk about that. So, Aidan.
It's set in a South American country some years after the fall of dictatorship. And my character is a human rights lawyer whose car breaks down on the way home. He's helped out by another character and he brings me home, and my wife hears the voice of the person who helped me and believes that it may be the voice of the person who was involved in her interrogation during the dictatorship.
So he's an apparently kindly gentleman.
Very kindly gentleman at the start, yes, and you get to see, if you come along and see the show, you'll get to see how these characters bounce off each other and they interact, and ask yourself the question of, is this the first time that these characters have all met, or is it not?
Sharon?
Well, I play the wife of Gerardo Escobar, the lawyer who's been put in charge of the commission, which is going to investigate crimes committed during the dictatorship. And I think my character evolves throughout the play from starting off being a loving housewife, an ideal housewife in fact, and becomes something a bit different as the play evolves.
So it is very much a very dramatic, very serious piece of theatre. So we had a little discussion earlier about some of the themes, and you came up with a list of 27 themes, I seem to remember. So perhaps we might like to discuss a couple of themes each.
For me, I think at the highest of levels, it straddles the fault line between justice versus vengeance, and at what point does justice turn into vengeance? Are you right or wrong in the actions that you take? And at what point does legal justice fail to a degree? And at what point does natural, possibly primal justice take over?
And indeed a distinction between what one might describe as societal justice and personal justice, whether it is from the commission who are looking into the crimes of the dictatorship, or whether it is, as you say, a slightly more primordial sort of justice.
And all the way through the play, that's at a very high level, but all the way, what's driving for me the drama along is, again, that exploration of memory and trauma, and the effect that trauma, past experiences may have on memory. There's a lot of questions that get raised in this show, and I think it will leave the audience and wondering, and a lot of debate afterwards, I would imagine.
Paul mentions trauma. That, for me, that's one of the biggest and most interesting themes of the play. How people survive trauma, how brave people can be in the worst possible situations, and to stand up to an oppressive regime, but have to carry on living once, even if regime changes. How do you carry on living with what you went through and what you remember? How you cope with that, and whether this is an extreme trauma possibly that she has been through, and everyone goes through trauma of some kind, but I think it would be interesting for the audience to ask themselves, what would they do? What might they do in that situation? How would they be when the past comes back to haunt the present?
Yes, because you very much shut it away. Your response is very visceral, isn't it, suddenly? And one of the things that I'm interested in the play is because in doing the sound, I've consciously had this gentle rolling sea behind the ocean sounds, which are very gentle, in complete contrast to the trauma that's on the stage. And so, as from an audience point of view, you're kind of wondering what's going on, and it attempts to create that tension as the individual actors move together and separate and go to act with someone else, and the tension moves around on the stage. I find that really interesting.
I think it also looks a lot into the idea of truth. What is truth and openness, both in terms of the marriage between Paulina, Gerardo, and in terms of the truth that is mentions the truth an awful lot in the play, both the real truth and the commission attempting to find the truth, and Roberto regularly asking whether we really want the truth. And I think that it's playing with the idea of potentially the idea of one person's truth isn't necessarily being, shall we say, the truth.
Yes. Well, in fact, you say at some point you could have too much truth.
Indeed. Yes.
Yes.
And as you say, one person's truth isn't not necessarily the same. They have a different perspective,
Absolutely.
or they're hiding it in a different way. Yeah. No, I think as a play, it is fascinating. It's a fascinating journey, terrifying journey in many ways. And of course, it's in the studio, where you're very close to the audience. Given that I mentioned the studio, we've been rehearsing in the studio, and obviously our great leader Kim, the director, has been cracking the whip. But how has the experience been?
Oh, I think it's been brilliant. It's such a great play. It's such a great. It's just wonderful saying these fantastic lines over and over again. Two great colleagues to work with, and I just do love. I think it's ideally placed for the studio. It's just, as an audience member, what I think it offers you is intrigue, excitement, drama, lots of questions, wondering what's going to happen next. I think the relationships between the characters are very interesting. It's got some historical truth with it as well. I think it will make audiences think, but they'll really enjoy it as well.
Yeah,
It's incredibly
Absolutely.
relevant still,
Yeah.
isn't it? Even though it was written in the 90s, I think.
Yeah.
And it is set against the backdrop of a dictatorship that happened decades ago. The themes are still incredibly relevant.
Yes.
All right, well, that was great. Thank you very much. I should say that it's on at the Putney Arts Theatre in the studio, and you can go to putneyartstheatre.org.uk to buy your tickets. But they tend to go very quickly, so please do rush over right now and book them. Thank you so much, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Nick.
This is a real Putney Theatre Company production. Do share the podcast with your friends and take a look at our website, searching online for the Putney Theatre Company. So that's it for now. See you next time.